Thank you. Saurav, you want to say something before we start? You're on mute.
Looking forward, it's Dharmesh has been sort of a guru, even for me, and we've kind of
Not at all,
uh,
man.
collaborated well in the past. Really looking forward to this session today. I am sure it'll make a big difference to everybody. The stage is yours, boss.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I can see 181 participants on this, and I'm sure there are many more on the YouTube channel also. So, good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone on this Saturday morning. Thank you. Thank you for investing your time and allowing me to share from what I have learned through life and through various failures myself. So, yeah, I mean, let's go through the slides. It'll be kind of a monologue, though I wish I would have been able to kind of interact, but I guess we will leave it in this format. And towards the end, we can definitely have a lot of time for Q&A, because I think that interaction will really kind of throw more texture and more insights onto what the slides are going to be presented. So please feel free to kind of keep sending in your questions. I'm sure Saurav and his team are there who are taking up all the questions, and they will be we'll be having a kind of a Q&A towards the end where Saurav will pose those questions and try to answer them. And invitation to you, Saurav, wherever you feel like jumping in, please do that, because you too have been through a wonderful journey, and there's a lot of learning one can have from you too. All right, so with that, let's just progress. So, we have kind of heard this quote, like, failure is not an option, and this was made famous in 1957, Apollo 13 venture from NASA, when they were trying to kind of get back the astronauts who were on the mission to the moon, but they failed and they were not able to kind of return back. And while it was relevant there, because failure is not an option was more to ensure that the astronauts are brought back safely when they had power failure in the capsule. I think it has become such a prevalent and out of context quote that we start to kind of make the failure much more bigger than what it is. And to me, this is utter bullshit. Failure is not an option is absolute bullshit, because not failing is actually not an option. Whatever you try, whenever you do something, you are bound to fail. The chances of failure are much more higher than your chances of getting success in the first go. And hence, not failing is not an option. And as they say, those who have not failed have not taken any risk in life, and hence there is no growth and there is no learning. So failure is going to be there, and we have experienced failure. So when we talk about leveraging failure for success, what are we talking about? Let's understand, and Saurav knows that I'm an engineer too, and my mindset kind of works on a lot of structure. Let's try to kind of first and foremost understand leveraging means what. And a lot of you are engineers, and I'm sure you know what leveraging is. So here's what the dictionary meaning of leveraging is: using something to maximum advantage. Yeah, using something to maximum advantage. So how can we leverage failure? So leveraging failure actually means how do we use our failures to maximize our success. And if we don't use that failure, there's no point in failing. And the only way to succeed is to kind of leverage the failures. So I just want to kind of make that absolutely clear, that this is simple and yet so complex. And the reason why it is complex is because it's not easy, because we are all human beings and we are getting impacted by failure. So the flow of this presentation or this monologue or talk would be that first and foremost, we'll try to spend time to understand failures and understand why they hurt us. Because we all know as failures, we all know we have failed so many times. But why does it hurt us? And understanding what actually is failure, we'll go through brief, pretty detailed session on that. And then we try to understand how do we overcome failures, because understanding is at one level. Because we get hurt, it is so important to overcome that and be at a stage where we are okay with that failure. And that is a critical aspect. Just want to kind of do a very quick check. Am I audible very clearly? I know. Yeah, okay,
Yes, sir.
wonderful. Yeah, so I thought Purti came on, so I thought, yesterday I had a little trouble speaking loud, so I just wanted to kind of get that. So getting back to the flow, so understanding failure and then trying to kind of overcome failure, and then finally learning to leverage failure. Because you can't just, if you don't understand and if you're not able to overcome failures, you would not be in a position to leverage the failures, because the failures will consume you, will consume your energy, will consume your confidence, will consume your motivation, and all of that. So that's going to be the broad flow of this session. So let's look at first and foremost understanding failures, right? So again, let's try to look at definition and dictionary meaning of what failure actually is. And this is one of the definitions. There are many definitions, but this is one of the definition which I thought is the most neutral and most objective definition. The definition of failure is the action or state, I'm sorry for the typo, of non-functioning. The action or state of non-functioning. Something which doesn't function means it has failed, all right? But what we make out of it, we make failure as being an unsuccessful person. We make failure as deficiency of desirable qualities. We make failure as lack of success. And actually, that's not really true, because failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the success. So let's try to kind of embrace this and understand this aspect, that failure is part of success. If you don't fail, you will never succeed. Get that, embedded in your psyche. So I want to kind of very quickly show you a small YouTube video, and I'm sorry, I'll just try to kind of share my screen, which is somewhere else, and I'm trying to kind of find that out. Excuse me for not putting that up earlier. Yeah, there it is. And can you see my screen? No, not yet, I guess. I'm sharing it. Apologies. Yeah, now I'm sharing it. So this is a small YouTube video about a child trying to walk.
Can you standing and clapping? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah. So we all have learned to walk in this manner. Did we get up and start walking the first time that we ever tried? Oops. I'm sorry, the other video started. Okay. Yeah. So, yes, did we start walking the first time that we all tried to kind of walk? And no, we failed. We fell down and we got up, and we fell down and we got up, and we fell down and we got up. And at that point in time, there was nothing in us which says, oh, I'm a failure, I can't walk, and I'm not going to kind of get up. But we all did and learned in the same manner. So, what is the difference between what we were as a child and today? And I think the difference is that we developed our intellect, and with that intellect came in that whole aspect about sense of self. And that sense of self then starts to prevent you, because the way we start to kind of understand failure is that I have failed. It is not an event, but it is about me. And we start attributing things to ourselves. And it's also the society in which we operate. And we know the problem that is that we have created winning is everything society, and in that failure has no place in it. And that's actually pretty detrimental, because the real problem with failure is that we can read too much into it. Too often we tie our sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-acceptance to all of it to failure. The expectation we fail to meet is often our own, or one that we have created in our own head. And frankly speaking, this is why failure is hurtful. We end up making failure more than what it is. From being a mere action or state of non-functioning, we make this into a big, hairy monster that consumes us and demeans us in our own eyes. And that is an important aspect to kind of understand. So, please keep your questions coming. This is an important aspect as to why do we take failure. And let's go into a little bit of theory. And I'm trying to kind of use the model which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We all grow up having these needs, and Maslow had kind of very beautifully captured them. We all have physiological needs, which is air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. All of that are very important. Then we have safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, property, etc. Everything that keeps us safe. We have the need to love and belong, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. All of that is again important. And then there is a need for self-esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And then there is need to self-actualize, and self-actualize is desire to become the most that one can be, and going beyond all those needs and getting into self-actualization stage. So failure actually impacts us at all of these levels, all of these levels of the needs. And just to kind of expand that model into another favorite model of mine, which is Barrett. And what I can do is, towards the end of this, I'll send you a small link which you can take a free assessment for yourself. So what the Barrett model does is it takes the last aspect of this self-actualization needs and blows it up into another 4 levels. And those levels are basically, viability is all about ensuring stability. It's the first and second level of Maslow's hierarchy. Relationship is the third level of Maslow's hierarchy. Performance is self-esteem. And these are all 3 are about self-interest. And then we evolve. We create an alignment where we become authentic. We collaborate, and we start contributing to the larger good of the world. And without going too much into detail of this, with this model, the bottom 3 needs are the self-interest needs, and the top needs are for the greater good. And believe you me, the success is when you do something not for yourself but for others. Success is when there is a greater good involved in your efforts. And the only way to kind of do that greater good is to overcome your self-interest needs. And failure is what keeps you in that area of self-interest. If you operate with that mindset of failure is impacting me, you will never be able to evolve. You will never be able to transcend from those needs which keep you grounded or are survival needs in some sense. And you will never be in a position to contribute to a greater good, and hence you will never be able to be successful. So success is not just in terms of money or in terms of something being successful. It is actually, are you making a difference to this world? And that's the larger aspect of success. Yeah. So again, very, very important aspect, that how do we define success is also very important. So I'm going to kind of run three situations in the next 3 slides. So imagine yourself in each of these 3 scenarios and see for yourself and make a note to yourself whether you would consider yourself to have failed in each of these scenarios. Okay, so let's go through that and make a note for yourself. You don't need to share it, just this is for your self-reflection. So the first scenario, an experienced marathon runner sets a goal to run her next marathon in under 4.5 hours. This goal is a full 15 minutes shorter than her prior best time. She completes the marathon in 4 hours and 36 minutes, besting her prior record by 9 minutes. Do you consider this as a failure? Just write in your own whatever notebook or something. The second scenario, a senior director seeks a promotion to VP and competes against other internal and external candidates. She receives positive feedback, but she gets told that the leadership team felt that hiring an external person would demonstrate their commitment to change. Has she failed? What is your view? Just write it down. Third scenario, a top young professional at an organization gets asked to prepare a slide deck for a high-profile meeting. He submits what he considers to be an excellent presentation to his boss. The boss praises the work but substantially changes the slides before the big meeting. Do you consider this as a failure? So now notice that the differentiator in all these 3 failure analysis examples is an ideal that we have set in our mind. So if we think that the marathon runner has failed because she didn't reach her goal, that's the mindset that we are operating in. If we feel that the VP has failed because the management has decided to hire an external candidate, even though she was good enough and very well suited for the job for different reasons, we feel that I am a failure. That shows the problem of our mindset and how we perceive failure. All of these are not failures. These are success. I mean, imagine shaving off 9 minutes in your marathon. If you are a marathon runner, you know shaving off even 3 to 4 minutes is a big achievement. And she has shaved off 9 minutes. It's a huge achievement. And I'm sure when she runs the next time, she'll be able to shave off further more minutes and get better at it. So failure is not just not succeeding. You can set whatever goals you want to, but then, just leave it to the universe to see what happens. So just notice the differentiator. If you have felt that in all of these 3 instances, the protagonist or the person has failed, then that's the mindset with which you're operating. And I'm sure the way it was posed, a lot of would have said, oh no, I don't think it's a failure, it's a success. So, and that's another point. When we are looking at it from an outside perspective, for all of these instances, we can find it successful. And we can find something brighter in that. And we can say that, oh, the marathon runner has shaved off 9 minutes. Oh, show what, she didn't get the VP position. She did very well and she's suited. Maybe some other opportunity will come by. And so what if the presentation got changed? The boss really appreciated and the person has put in all the efforts. We are able to see it for the other person. The invitation is to now see it for yourself also whenever you experience failure. Yeah. So, failure is an ideal we have set in our own mind, and it's got nothing to do with who we are. Yeah. So now onwards, I invite you to kind of have this motto: I may fail, but I'm not a failure. Yeah. So that's the most important aspect to understand about failure and why it hurts us. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and sip some water and allow you to kind of note down some questions that you may have. And if Saurabh wants to chime in with any points, any reflections so far from his side. Okay, if nothing, then we'll get on to the second aspect of failure, which is about overcoming failure. So how do we overcome failure? So there is this whole technique which is called reframing. And reframing is often used in coaching. And the whole idea is to see situation in a different light. Okay? And reframing is one of the most strongest and proven techniques to overcome failures, to overcome any situation where we are in that rut of self-deprecation and self-beating up your own self when something fails, even though you have put in your full efforts. And even if you are not put in your full efforts, either ways. So let me give you a very personal story and my earliest memory of failure. And this is a personal story and I'm just sharing it with all of you. And I must have been in, senior KG or UKG as they say here in South India. And I was invited by my school teacher or school principal to speak at a school assembly on Lokmanya Tilak's birthday. Okay. My mom, she made a lot of efforts. In pre-Google days, she got history books from various people. She made a speech about Lokmanya Tilak. She prepared me. And on the day of the presentation, I dress up, with the tie, and she pins a napkin on my pocket. And out I go out there. I stand in front of the assembly and I start my speech saying that today is Lokmanya Tilak's birthday, and then I freeze. And I freeze. And for the next 10 seconds, nothing comes out of my mouth. And then the whole assembly of kids bursts into laughter. And my vice principal comes and picks me away. And I don't remember anything after that. And that is when I developed this sense saying that, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of all the efforts that my mom has put into me, and I have failed. And that aspect I carried through my life, and that prevented me from achieving what I wanted to achieve. And many years later, and after many gray hairs, and after going through a lot of workshops of, understanding oneself, I was able to reframe that earliest memory, which has a deep psychological impact on me. And we all have such events in our life, all of us. And that's why it's so important to kind of reframe that. And I was asked to reframe that event and see how might I see that event differently today. I saw it that way. So there is an event and there is a meaning making of it. The event was that I went up on the stage, prepared, and I froze. I was not able to speak. That's an event, and that's the actuality, and that's the reality of what happened. The meaning making that I made out of it is that I'm not worthy enough of my mother's efforts, or I'm not good enough. And that meaning making got stuck with me and became my, the ball at the end of my ankle, which dragged me down. So if we reframe it, what's the meaning making that I made for that event? And I said, probably I was the youngest comedian and I, helped the whole assembly burst into laughter at that point in time. And how stupid it may feel, it just lightens up the whole situation when you try to make a different meaning out of that situation and don't hold yourself responsible and carry that thing throughout your life. You know. So reframing is a very, very powerful tool. You may call it tricking your brain, and it is actually tricking your brain, but it is tricking your brain for your own well-being. And you better do that. Because the first one is also tricking the brain. It's not a reality. Please understand that when you make meanings for yourself, which are detrimental, which are self-deprecating, you are actually tricking your brain, because that's not the truth thing. That's a meaning making that you have done. So if you can make meaning making in a negative manner, can you make a meaning making in a different manner? And that's the big lever to understand how to overcome failures. Okay? So I'm going to kind of share a few slides and few techniques now, specifically when we are now into our adulthood and we are trying out things and we are trying to kind of, experiment and possibly not necessarily succeed. So how else might we define our failure that we encounter on a regular basis? So first, try to be a novice. So when you're new at something, success is less likely, as we saw, right? I mean, the baby trying to kind of walk, first time. Success, have you seen any baby walk the moment he or she gets up? No. So just as you can't see and expect a child to tie their shoes perfectly for the first time or do whatever they need to do for the first time, or even eat, they'll put the spoon in all the places but the mouth, or even the 10th time, you can't hold yourself to the standards of experts when you are a novice. So just understand, you're starting off. Come on, you don't have the expertise that others have. So when you try something new, take the beginner's mindset. Remind yourself that you are a novice and give yourself many chances to improve. So that's one of the hacks that you can use whenever you are encountering failure. Yeah? And you may make note of all of these, because this will be very helpful, and if required, I'll share the slides that can be shared with whoever needs it later on. Looking at it as a learning opportunity. And why do we not look it at a learning opportunity is because fear of failure is one of the strongest inhibitors of learning. Because learning means failing. Learning means trying out something new, and trying out something new is failing, and then learning from it, and then applying it and possibly succeeding. So when something happens that is different than what was expected, which is usually the failure is, because it's different from what you expected it to be, we stand to learn about ourselves and how we handle setbacks and the unexpected. Apart from the other things, we also learn about how we should do things, how we should not do things. We also learn things about ourselves. And if you find yourself feeling defensive about a failure, reframe the situation by asking yourself, what can you learn out of that? And the moment that you ask that question, that feeling of failing will then give rise to the energy of trying it out again and saying that, okay, I learned this about myself. I learned this about the process. I learned this about the technology. I learned this about the market. I learned this about whatever. Fill in the blanks that you can. And there, every failure can have wide range of possibilities of learning. So use every failure as a learning opportunity. Many times perfectionism is also feels like failure. So if you have a strong perfectionist streak in you, which many of us engineers do carry with ourselves, you may label things as failures even if they are not. So creating this kind of PowerPoint presentation is a big chore and big task for me, because I want it to be perfect all the time. And I have now gotten over it, and I say, okay, I can. What is perfect? Perfect is good for purpose, right? So when I pick up a pencil out here, is this perfect? Yes, it is perfect, because it does the job of writing. Now trying to perfect it further and have some high ideals about an expectation of what you should be doing is short recipe for experiencing failure, because you've set the bar so high for yourself. And please don't mistake me, I'm not saying that you shouldn't set your bar high. Set your bar high, but also understand that when you set your bar high, you are not going to achieve it the first time. And if you have that perfectionist streak, there are likelihood that you will start seeing yourself as a failure and either get demotivated or lose, the enthusiasm to kind of pursue it further. Saying that unless and until I don't get it perfect, I don't think I'm going to even attempt it. And that doesn't help. So when you're beating yourself up for failure, ask yourself, have I actually failed? Maybe there was a mistake in my typo somewhere. Doesn't mean that I'm a failure. Yeah. Am I getting my point across? That's important. And the last thing that I have, and there are many more, and you can discover them for yourself, these kind of hacks or reframing. Trial and error. And this is the famous quote by Thomas Edison. We know that. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that the light bulb won't work. So a core principle of design thinking, and I'm sure you would have read a lot about design thinking, is the idea of failing fast and learning from failure. This mindset embraces failure as a natural part of creative process. So when you see failure as a data point, you create new opportunities for improvement. Yeah. So being a novice, trying to kind of learn, using every failure as a learning opportunity, overcoming that perfectionist streak, using every opportunity of failure as a trial and error, and using those data points and as a learning opportunity are some of the various ways that you can use to reframe your failure. So let failure be an event and nothing more than that. Okay, so we are on the second section. So we understood, the third section. Again, a typo. How do we actually leverage failure now? All right, so failure is learning, failure creates resilience, and failure builds qualities. And I have purposely shown this visual of a catapult, because what does a catapult do? It takes your stone or whatever you're trying to kind of throw behind before it can propel forward, right? Like the bow and arrow. You pull the arrow behind. So use this failure as going behind, and that kinetic energy which has developed and learning from it which has come to propel yourself forward. And that is the true leveraging of failure. And believe you me, you cannot leverage failure if you continue to operate in that mindset of attaching that to your own self-esteem, self-belief, and beating yourself up. And then I'm not good enough, or I don't want to kind of do it. And many times that prevents us from even attempting. There are fantastic projects around. There are fantastic opportunities around. Each one of you, I'm sure, has brilliant ideas of how to change the world for better. But what holds us back is that fear of failure. Oh, that's not for me. I want to kind of go and take a cushy job. That's going to be a short, comfort recipe. I mean, the future belongs to you guys. Please understand that. You are not, by playing small, you are actually doing disservice to the entire humanity. So use this aspect of failure, use the opportunities that you're having to fail and learn from it, and do something which is far, far more powerful. And all the failures that you'll be experiencing now in the next few years is all that catapult which is going behind. It's all that bow which is taking and giving the energy for you to propel forward. So again, we live in a world where success as individuals and teams depend on us learning more and faster to perform better. If we aren't failing, we probably aren't taking enough risk. too often we kind of intellectually embrace this experimentation. We say, we are experimenting and risk-taking. But we want to do it efficiently and cleanly without failing. And that isn't the intent. So the way to use or leverage failure is to use the failure to develop strengths. What strengths? So next slide is the list of some of those strengths which I will be sharing. Create the strength for self-compassion, because it's only when you have self-compassion will you be able to show compassion to others. Show kindness towards yourself and others involved in the failure. Focus on empathy and keeping the failure in perspective. There's a difference between admitting failure and beating yourself up over it. This is a great learning one can develop from failure as to how you treat yourself. And the moment you learn to treat yourself with compassion, you have developed this ability of compassion to treat others. And believe you me, that's a leadership trait. That's not just helping you overcome the failure part of it, but it's helping you become a great leader in the future. And as you go and set up organizations or be part of organizations, you will be required to call on this leadership trait every time. So how you develop your ability to handle failures at this stage of your life is going to set you up for success at the later stage of life. And that's an important aspect that I want you to kind of consider. Yeah. So the second point is cognitive agility. This whole aspect of learning, pivoting, what is it? It's creating that cognitive agility and that intellect. Use that intellect. That intellect can be dampened by that whole emotion of failure if you just carry it for too long. So being able to quickly learn from the failures and pivot to new opportunities, use these data points, use that as a learning opportunity, is going to showcase your cognitive agility. How you have understood, okay, this is not the case, and how can I pivot myself onto something else? There's a series on Netflix which is called Losers. You should watch that. Every episode is about some kind of a sport person describing how they have immensely failed, and yet in longer run those failures have helped them succeed and create success for themselves in different ways, in different forms. May not necessarily be in the sporting event itself, but how some of them have become great motivational speakers, and how that is now fulfilling far more than if they were just winning medals. So every failure can be leveraged and pivoted into doing various stuff, not necessarily doing the same stuff over and over again. And that's the idea of pivots, right? I mean, we've heard this word in the startup world. Right, so growth mindset. Again, there's a fantastic book which is by this title, Mindset, which is by Carol Dweck, and maybe you should read that. And it talks about having a fixed mindset, which says that I can't do this work is not good enough, this is too hard. This is a fixed mindset. And growth mindset says, I can try a different strategy, is this really my best work? And this may take some more time and effort, but let me try it again and in a different manner. So taking a learner's approach with a non-judgmental stance is very important. By default, we respond defensively or cast a blame whenever there is a failure. Instead, reflect deeply and try to understand how to be different going forward. And that is enabling you and creating the growth mindset in you. So how you take failures and how you learn from it, showcase it as you having this whole growth mindset and not just sitting down with a fixed mindset and saying that I failed. The next one is problem solving. Staying curious and creative, collect the data to inform the decisions towards the next step. It is a great showcasing of your problem solving ability, because every failure presents a new set of problems that needs to be solved. Again, talking about that whole uh, quote that I started with, failure is not an option, which was done by, in 1957, NASA Apollo 13, uh, event. Cut back to today's day and age in 2020 and 2021, when SpaceX was trying to kind of create new ways to kind of go into the space. Again, there's a beautiful documentary on Netflix which is called Return to Space, which is all about Elon Musk's whole attempt to create rockets that can be reused, not just aircrafts that can be reused like the Challenger and Endeavour and all those kind of things, the space shuttles. These are about rockets that can be reused. And when they were trying, they wanted support from NASA. NASA failed to give them the support. Then they tried. He put all his money and bet his last dollar to it. And they could do 3 attempts, and all 3 attempts failed. And after that, he said, what have we learned from all 3 attempts? And we have chance for one more attempt. And in that 4th attempt, after pumping in billions of dollars, they succeeded in bringing back the rocket with a perfect landing. This is all problem solving. He said, and he goes on to the quote even on the episode out there, Return to Space, that every event we minutely dissected, every event of failure we minutely dissected, went through millions of data codes trying to understand where we could do differently, what problems did we encounter, and how do we solve those problems. So problem solving ability is something that can be developed and showcased through those failures. And yes, failures can give you a reason to find out why are you doing all of these in the first place. Reconnect to the larger meaning behind the goal or what you're trying to pursue, and use that to drive new approaches. When you encounter failure, connecting to the larger purpose will provide you with the motivation and the strength to overcome and press on. Just to call out on Saurabh, what he's doing out here is not just a venture. It is a purpose for himself. And we have been talking a lot, and I know him for many years, and I know how purpose driven he is. And that gives him the motivation to overcome failures and every time move on and do something different and learn from the data points that are coming in. And finally, recognition. It gives you the ability, leadership ability, to recognize and appreciate the efforts of yourself and others who have dedicated their efforts thus far. So feel successful by weighing the process as much as, or even sometimes more than, the outcome. And that gives you that leadership ability to understand how to address failures for yourself and even for others. So, frankly speaking, organizations and investors are actually looking for these strengths when evaluating candidates for employment or investments. So self-compassion, cognitive agility, growth mindset, problem-solving skills, purpose and meaning, recognition, all of these are leadership capabilities. And if you fail, and if you're able to connect to all of these, you can proudly show those battle scars and use that and leverage that appropriately to get what you need. So summing up, and I'm on my final couple of slides, I guess. You are at a stage where you can afford to fail. Don't waste this opportunity. Your college projects, your incubation idea, all of it might fail and will fail. Embrace it. Use the failure to learn how not to do things and develop your leadership capabilities and resilience. And, this is Michael Jordan. I missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed it. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. And lastly, I would want to kind of share a beautiful poem recited by Amitabh Bachchan, which is what I want to share now. And I'm going to share it. Sorry. Where is that? कोशिश करने वालों की हार नहीं होती, and I know we all have heard it, but I don't want to kind of share it for the nth time.
कि लहरों से डरकर नौका पार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती। नन्ही चींटी जब दाना लेकर चलती है, चढ़ती दीवारों पर 100 बार फिसलती है। मन का विश्वास रगों में साहस भरता है, चढ़कर गिरना गिरकर चढ़ना ना अखरता है। आखिर उसकी मेहनत बेकार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती। डुबकियां सिंधु में गोताखोर लगाता है, डुबकियां सिंधु में गोताखोर लगाता है, जा जाकर खाली हाथ लौट कर आता है। मिलते नहीं सहज ही मोती गहरे पानी में, मिलते नहीं सहज ही मोती गहरे पानी में। मुट्ठी उसकी खाली हर बार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती। और अंतिम पद है कि असफलता एक चुनौती है, इसे स्वीकार करो। असफलता एक चुनौती है, इसे स्वीकार करो। क्या कमी रह गई देखो और सुधार करो। जब तक न सफल हो नींद चैन को त्यागो तुम, जब तक न सफल हो नींद चैन को त्यागो तुम। संघर्ष का मैदान छोड़कर मत भागो तुम, कुछ किए बिना ही जय जयकार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती।
Beautiful. So with that brings me to the end of this monologue, and hope it was able to kind of make some sense, and sort of.
I was trying to write the introduction for Dharmesh when was talking to Purti. The word immaculate came in the head. I don't know from where. You haven't lost your touch. Point well. I think these journeys that Dharmesh is talking about. In these journeys, you come across also people who are like. We call it old wine, right? And they just get better and better. So, Dharmesh, compliments to you.
Thank you so much.
Enriching as usual. Okay, now so here is a flurry of questions that are coming up, and I think we want to. So, one of the questions, I think it's from one of the professors who's in this college, and he's kind of put up this point saying, "My organization doesn't seem to accept failure. How do I?" solve or even if I keep myself motivated, I think he's saying even if I accept failure, my organization is not sorted in that thought process. So do I change organizations or do I just continue my journey?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I mean this is a layered question, frankly speaking. Organizations definitely don't want to fail because many times there are huge investments behind it, and huge repercussions and impact on not just the stakeholders, and stakeholders I mean not just the shareholders but all the stakeholders, including customers, employees, society in which you operate. I mean, you remember Chernobyl or Bhopal, it's a failure, right? I mean, we cannot have those kind of failures, and it has a huge impact on the organization and even on the society. So yes, there are times when organizations don't wish to fail, and there's a difference between failing and creating disasters. And if you don't want to fail there, this is where you use all the failing opportunities and try to learn from it. Yeah, that is one aspect, and that's the overriding aspect. So trying to kind of change the organization to say that, oh, we should accept failure is a double-edged sword, because on the regular stuff that we are doing, definitely we don't want to fail. But on the new stuff we are doing, definitely there is an opportunity for it. Do you think Google succeeds every time they try out something new? We know how big a failure and flop was the Google Glass project, and it was Sergey Brin's personal pet project, and that failed, right? I mean, so new ideas can fail, and they can have their impact on the organizations. Personally speaking, I mean, I sort of, and Purti kind of shared my introduction that I kind of am not an HR person, but I headed the HR for the organization which me and Saurabh were working together for a long period of 7 to 8 years. And when my CEO kind of put me into that position and said that I want you to kind of take over HR and be the CHRO for this company, the first thing that I asked him, can I fail? And he smiled and he said, that's an interesting question. And he says, yes, you can. And I think that is setting these expectations and saying that, okay, you are taking a non-HR person and putting them into HR. Do I have an opportunity to fail? And only then I will use this opportunity. So we can do all of that. And he could have said, no, we don't have an opportunity to fail because this is so important at this point in time. Point well taken. Then maybe I'm not the right candidate. Maybe we need to find somebody else. You know? So it's about navigating that. It's about setting the expectations. It's about understanding the context in which you're operating. It's about the impact that it could create. So failures are fine, disasters are not. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, I think a very converse question is from one of the principals of the college. He's saying, if I allow failure within my team members, does that risk creating a culture which accepts underperformance? How do I differentiate?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, it's in the same lines. Whether we creating an ethos for failure or are we creating an ethos for high performance? And high performance and failures are two sides of the same coin. You cannot expect people to perform high unless and until you allow them to fail. And again, different organization, different context, right? I mean, if you are, let's say, in a standard stuff like utilities or anything where everything is set, there is process, you have tons of years of experience of, doing that work. And they're bringing in lack of diligence, lack of effort, and using that and camouflaging it as a failure and not allowing the failure is wrong. Failure is always when you're trying to learn from things. And individuals, so innovative organizations, definitely they breed the culture of failure. Long back, my brother, he was with Pfizer and he was with the R&D and the research division of Pfizer. And, he told me something which was very shocking at that point in time to me. He says, 2% of our drug trials, everything that we try out succeeds. Our success rate is 2%. Our failure rate is 98%. But in that 2%, they can get a blockbuster like a Viagra, and that can take care of everything else. So it depends upon the context of the organization. And of course, trying to kind of say that, we should promote failure and trying to hide lethargy and, lack of diligence and lack of efforts. Definitely, those are differences. And organizations understand those differences. As individuals also, we should understand that.
There's a question from a college project saying we only get 1 semester or 2 semesters to do a product or prototype. How do we plan our timing? Because there will be more than 1 or 2 failures.
The project may have the timelines from the college point of view, but if you really believe about that project, you can carry it on further than that. You don't need to kind of, So yeah. So for instance, I mean, there was this master's degree in neuroscience of leadership that I was trying to was undergoing the course, and this was, I think, between 2012 and 2014. And during that time, I had to kind of submit a thesis, and I had to kind of even do a research and do the research finding. And in that research finding, definitely my research failed, my hypothesis failed. And it's okay. I mean, my project was to kind of do the research, not whether it succeeds or not. And I think that's what you need to also understand, that the semester projects or time bound projects that you have been given is to go through that process, not necessarily succeed. And if you believe in those projects, definitely you need to continue, you can continue post the semesters also.
So a question from a startup guy saying, my product development team failed on two deliverables. One was what was intended to be done, and one was what they had not anticipated. How do I address this?
Again, context matters a lot. So the idea of today's presentation was not again to camouflage lack of efforts as celebrating failures. But yes, definitely, if there is something, and if you're a startup, then you're going to have new people, you're going to have not very experienced people joining you, and which is the reason why things will fail. And again, when I gave you example of SpaceX and Elon Musk, he did say that we failed 3 times because we couldn't afford, and NASA wouldn't give their scientists and their technology to us. So we had to do right from everything from scratch, and that's why we failed. And it's fine. So you understand what you're getting into. You understand that you're going to have not experienced people and not experts working with you, and there could be failures. Important aspect is how do we learn from every failure, even if it is saying that, oh, we need to improve our process, we need to improve the quality of people, we need to train them better, and all of them. From every failure there would be tons of learning that one can derive if you are looking for. And that's the invitation to all of you. Tolerating failures, not tolerating, is contextual, it's a business decision, but also learning failures. So even if you don't tolerate failure, it doesn't prevent you from learning from it.
I think one question, and it kind of also echoes something that I would have loved to ask Dharmesh. In a services organization where we are expected to continually deliver a set of SLAs all the time, we may be doing well, 99% of the times, 98% of the times, but there's that odd 1 or 2% where things go down. How should leadership really, address that? Because it can be punishing. You lose customers, right? And there could be a time where you are probably actually not doing the right stuff. How do you strike that balance? Because you're not being merciful on yourself and your organization in that case. Because if you react on failures there, it's kind of there's a lack of self-compassion, and you need it at times.
Absolutely.
How would you say in a services organization for sustained service delivery? Where would you recommend we strike the balance?
So it's not about striking the balance. It's about saying that again, how are you going to leverage? So when you say services organization, tell me a single service organization that has 100% success rate. It will not be. There are going to be, if you talk about hotels, there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be things which get into the food which shouldn't get into the food. There are things which should be getting into the room which shouldn't be getting into the room. Take airline businesses. I mean, there are going to be delays. There are going to be technical snags. There are going to be failures of the crew. But disasters, yes, if the airline kind of fails, of course, if the aircraft crashes, there's a whole set of people that try to, analyze that. That's not something that we want. And it is, but other stuff, how do you create again a culture where you, just like you are celebrating successes, are you taking opportunities to evaluate and do a deep dive and do a complete analysis of every time that you failed and seeing that what are we learning from it. And when you do that, you are actually striking that balance. Because when you're doing that, you are sending out that message that if we now, having learned from this, if we repeat that, now that is something that's not pardonable. But we are providing an opportunity for all of you to learn from it, and let's do it together and see what we can do better. So striking the balance is about actually saying that what are we learning from it, and then trying to mitigate that.
I haven't scored as well in my engineering, but I have got a reasonably good project. What are my prospects? I'll take that one up. Your prospects are great. Okay. Yeah, at least you'll be sure that another 20 years you'll be on one of these panelists like this. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
And
your project is important. Okay, just keep that in mind. Yeah,
yeah, and I just want to kind of add on to it. Please understand that examinations, project failures, all of that will happen to you. And when you go out into the world to sell yourself, either for securing a job in an organization or trying to kind of get investments or partners to work alongside with you, your confidence that you have in yourself is going to be your calling card. If you go with the mindset, oh, I failed in my engineering, if that is going to weigh you down, it will show up in the way you talk. You will be apologetic, you will not be confident, and people will read through it. But if you show the confidence which you get through your project, just go out and say that, and people will not even bother to ask you what marks did you get. Yeah.
I think that kind of sums up most of the stuff that we have. Purti, anything coming your end? Any questions from your side?
Sir, just give me a moment.
Sure.
So, Dharmesh, normally some questions do come later. So we'll probably just pick those up which have come on YouTube or which have come on another channel. Send it
Yeah,
across to you.
send it across and I can respond to them, definitely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, sir, that's about
That's it. Okay, great. Awesome. Fine. I think, guys, we kind of stick to our time, and this has been super fulfilling. Dharmesh, thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you for
I
having me.
think we immensely learned a lot of things and it's been simplified well. I'm sure there'll be a lot of views to the same video even afterwards, as we viral it across. So, looking forward to more interactions, and once again, thank you for making the time to be part of this initiative. For all the folks, this session will not be followed with any testing or any examination certification, but this is more around something that you can definitely talk about, relay, and reach out to us if you need to have a similar type of session for your team members. I think Dharmesh will be extremely courteous in being able to help you guys out and more around the same. He is a coach for leadership, and I think most folks do require it at times wherever they are in whichever sphere of life. So just feel free to reach out to us, and we can connect you with him or reach out to him directly. And I think make the most of all the expertise that's there.
Absolutely.
Available, and we'd love to share it. Thank you so much, and have a great day. And Dharmesh, once again, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. This has been very fulfilling for me too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Purti. Thank you everyone for joining in.